Know your worth and double it. We're in 17 states, and by the end of second quarter, we should be in 22.
Transaction Care, the podcast. Welcome home to the #1 real estate show on the market. I am your host and resident care coordinator, Lillian Hernandez, but you can call me Lily. My goal with each episode of Transaction Care is to demystify the business of real estate from my point of view and interviews from other voices within the real estate industry around the world. I'm giving you the keys. There are no gatekeepers here. So Shalonda Moore is an accomplished entrepreneur consultant with a strong background in the legal and real estate arenas. Her passion for helping individuals achieving home ownership and generational wealth inspired her to establish SM and Partners Consulting LLC, which has facilitated thousands of successful transactions in numerous states. Shalonda's experience and expertise led her to coach and mentor others in the field, culminating in the launch of the TC Institute in 2019. The TC Institute offers training and resources for unlicensed and licensed transaction coordinators and individuals aspiring to be transaction coordinators, aiming to empower the next generation of professionals. With a combination of old and new techniques and a driven mindset, Shalonda built a thriving TC business from scratch and is now sharing her knowledge with over 10,000 students and counting. So everybody, welcome our guest this week, Shalonda Moore.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. So how I like to get the podcast started is we know what you're doing today, but I want to know, how did you get here? What is the backstory? I know you weren't born a TC or, into the world of real estate, or maybe you were. So let's take a deep dive into how you got into this world.
Perfect. So kind of start off at the age of 5, I told my parents I was going to be a lawyer. So from there on, I was always on the path to being a lawyer and something in that realm. When I actually went to college, my major was political science with concentration in pre-law, and I actually got my master's in criminal justice with emphasis in legal studies. So I've always been in the legal arena. I was first in criminal justice law, and then I did pharmaceutical law. While helping a friend of mine's, it became very evident that I could do this. They asked me if I could help them be a TC. I got a 5-minute crash course on Georgia contracts. And then from there, they were like, okay, you can just figure it out. And I was like, okay, I have legal background, so this should be fun. So I spent one day reviewing contracts. That was it. And from there, I was doing it as a part-time job while I was in my master's program and still working a full-time job for a pharmaceutical company. And then one day I made the decision of I wanted to leave and pursue this full time. My TC business had taken off to the point of where I was closing 30 transactions a month. And I was like, we can expand this and we can do this full time. So from there, I left my full-time job and I became a full-time TC. So my passion now is helping other people realize that if you want to leave your full-time job, or if you want to have this as an addition to your full-time job, or if you are a stay-at-home mom and you want to do this for part-time, this is a field that you can kind of cater to whatever your needs are and whatever you want this field to field as a space for you, and you can accomplish that.
I love that. And I was laughing because I had that's pretty much how I became a TC. I was just thrown into the fire. I had about 5 minutes to figure it out because the TCs working at the office at the time quit all of a sudden. I was their little part-time college assistant. Had no intention of working in real estate or even getting this far in my career. And same here. I was just, read this. This is what you have to do. And here we are.
Look, at least we made it.
And we made it. You know what I mean? So I'm glad that we were able to stick it through. But so was real estate something you were ever interested in your youth? I know you said you got into law, but those are two completely different worlds in a sense that you're either a lawyer or a realtor. It's kind of difficult to do both at the same time.
In reality, I never wanted to be in real estate, like ever. So both of my parents were Department of Defense. There was never a real estate background for me. So I actually got thrown into real estate because I had a friend that was doing it. My then boyfriend also needed help. And he was a real estate agent in multiple states. And I kind of got thrown into it, which was amazing. I absolutely loved that. And my personality was always to try something new.
Right.
I always loved challenges. I was one of those kids that always was advanced in school. So having different challenges was always something that I enjoyed. So the challenge of learning real estate in the split second was something that everyone knew I could do. And I just had to tell myself, like, okay, just figure it out.
Right. And that's definitely the type of personality you have to have, especially as an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
You can't just sit back and wait for people to do things for you versus when you're at a 9 to 5, you're kind of in your own little corner, like this is your job, XYZ. Everyone around you is assigned all the other 10 different jobs versus, all right, well, if I'm going to do this as my own business, I am now, as we mentioned before the podcast, I was like, I'm editing, I'm interviewing, I'm writing. And how have you been able to balance that, considering you were working in pharmaceuticals, you have a background in law? How did organizing all of this come to be? Or are you still trying to find your footing?
So surprisingly, I have ADHD. So I have one of those attention spans that I am quick to be deterred, and I'm a squirrel. I love to tell people that. Like, I am a squirrel.
Relatable.
So my parents never thought that I was ADHD because for them, I could always focus in school. I was always amazing. So it never really came out until I was in college. And when I went to college, I had to learn how to learn as well as learn how to study because I wasn't the person that knew everything already as I was when I was in high school or even when I was doing like my college level classes in high school. I had a trick of I color coded everything I wrote. So I learned how to do that in college of color coding everything. And from there, it allowed for me to become so much more organized. So different subjects, different topics, everything was color coded. So from there, I was able to learn different organizational tips and learn different organizational trades that then translated over to my transaction coordination career. So surprisingly, when I started being a TC, I had no system. Because what was a system when I first started being a TC?
Right.
There was nothing.
Nothing. There's no specific roadmap. There's no one way to do it. You're just, again, thrown in the fire.
Correct. So what I did was I built a Google spreadsheet. So I created an entire Google spreadsheet, figured out how to, and mouthful, I'm very proficient in Excel and all of those lovely things. So I basically figured out a way to create this document that auto-filled all of my dates for me. It did everything for me. If I put in one date, it told me everything else to do. And then it basically told me the due date of every single task that I thought I needed to do.
Oh, wow.
Which worked well for me. I was able to use that system until I was about to do like about 50 transactions a month. I was able to use that system and still only work part-time. So from there, I was always trying to figure out a new system that will automate some of the items for me. So I could spend less time on my day-to-day TC tasks and more time of figuring out how to expand my business and things like that. So my first system I ever used was called TC Workflow.
Okay, yes.
I'm not sure if you remember that one. So I started off with that one first, and then it was great. Absolutely loved it. But then when Open to Close came out, I switched over to Open to Close. But it worked well when I was an independent TC to use that TC workflow at the time. Now that I have a team of TCs under me, it's a lot easier to use the bigger system of Open to Close. But I started off on a Google spreadsheet. And I always teach people now, you don't need these expensive systems as long as you have an understanding of what you want your task list to be. As long as you have that. And now I tell people Google has all of these lovely new tips and tricks that you can create your templates in there. You can do all of these things in Google. So if you want Gmail and you can use if you have Gmail, you can use G Suite and get your Google Docs in there and your Google Sheets. You have a system built for you. You don't have to waste the money to spend in a big TC system, especially if you're not closing more than 20 transactions a month.
That's a great point. First of all, I want to acknowledge and thank you for sharing that you have ADHD. I think a lot of us can relate. And I think also TCing is almost like a perfect job for someone that needs to just be able to focus on minimal things, but almost at a maximal level. It's kind of seems a little contradictory, but
I tell people, so I've had people ask me, I was like, okay, like, how are you able to be a TC, but you have ADHD? Right. My most focused time is the morning. And I learned that about myself. Like, I can focus the best in the morning. So I generally get all of my TC tasks done by like 10 o'clock. So everything for that day that I really have to get done is done by 10 o'clock. And after 10, it's just emails, and amendment requests, things like that come in that I then have to touch on. And I'm not having to send out due diligence reminders for like, do you have your why instructions? I'm not doing all of that after 10 o'clock.
That's a great point in terms of just knowing yourself well enough to schedule your day around that. And sometimes I think we get caught up in having to do everything around everyone else's schedule, which, yes, there are timelines and deadlines that we have to meet. But at the same time, it's like we can also structure our day that isn't doing things all 8 hours of the day.
Correct.
If we know our most focused time is in the morning, let's just get a bunch done at that time and then take a break, breathe, take a nap, whatever we need to reset and recharge. That is the best. Let's talk about what states do you TC for?
Oh man, I am in 17 states. So our entire company is
Wow.
in 17 states now. Our primary state is still Georgia. This is where I began at. I started in Georgia. This is where we have, I would say, the second most number of agents, surprisingly. So we finally have had a state that surpassed Georgia, and that's now Florida. Florida was actually my second state I started TCing at, and from there it branched out. I would love to make Virginia one of my bigger states. I was born and raised in Virginia, so I would love for that to be one of my bigger states. But Virginia market is how can I say this? The number of agents in Virginia is not as significant as a lot of other states. I would say Virginia, because of the number of agents, is a little bit smaller. Now, as far as volume is concerned, I still do a good volume. Our TCs do a good volume in Virginia still. We're in 17 states, and by the end of second quarter, we should be in 22.
Wow, I am fully impressed.
Yeah.
So do you have your hand in all 17 to potentially? Okay, so you're running an agency essentially, and
Correct.
okay.
I know all 17 states. I can do the TC work in all 17 states if I ever need to. However, my goal for being a TC was never to overwork myself.
Yes.
It was always, when I started the business, I wanted the business to be able to sustain itself. If whatever day it was, I needed to step away, or I just didn't feel like working, whatever it was, my business was still able to sustain itself. So we do have TCs or multiple TCs assigned to every state. And again, they do have clients in every single state. But if there's ever a day where, one of them is out and someone else can't cover them, then I always step in to cover whatever files and things like that they have going on.
That's amazing. So I know a lot of people get kind of stuck with the logistics of running a business, but how did you get comfortable with pricing things without, you don't have to disclose what you charge or your rates, but because I know those often change and, they get higher. Let's be honest. We should always aim to go higher.
Right.
But how did you get comfortable around money in general and finances and being comfortable with being an actual boss? That boss life is real, but it's different when you have employees and you're responsible for other people's livelihoods. So how did you navigate just the financial aspect of your business?
All right. So first I would say that I stuck by my rule of thumb was know your worth and double it. That's always my rule of thumb.
Writing that down.
And I've tried to tell everyone that I've ever coached or mentored, know your worth and double it. Never give a low price just because you're new. Your knowledge does not dictate your experience level. That's always tell people. You can be one of the smartest people in the world. I tell people all the time, there is no contract in any of the 17 states that we're in that I don't know front and back and can tell you how to get out of it and anything else. So always know your worth and double it. So when it came down to the finances of the business, I honestly had to take a step back and say, I don't know enough. And that was one of the hardest things that I had to do. I set my prices initially. My prices were low. I did market research and I was like, I'm going to be low just so I can get clients. That was my thought process. I'm going to be low to get clients. And then I had to take a step back. And a friend of mine told me, he's actually a CPA. He told me, he was like, hey, you're not charging enough. And I was like, I know I'm not, but I was trying to figure it out. So he actually gave me the advice to say, hey, what should you be charging? And mindful, every state varies. It honestly does. I always tell people California, New York, places like that, they pay more for TCs. It is a reality of it. Now, some TCs are going to hate me to say this. New York is probably one of my easiest states, and I also get paid the most. Our TCs get paid the most, but it's one of our easiest states because they have 2 attorneys.
Yeah.
There's an attorney representing both sides of the transaction.
Right.
I would say my TCs maybe spend 4 or 5 hours on a transaction in there, but they get paid more than our TCs in, I would say, like Tennessee and Alabama, who do more work than they do, because it's always proximity. And I've learned to charge based upon the state. So I don't have a set rate generally based upon, because across the board, it is done based upon the state. Because guess what? If I was in California and I lived in California and I TC'd in California, $600, $700 is not abnormal for those states. Do I charge as much as them? No, because I also live in Georgia and I don't really have any TCs that TC in California and also live in California. Most of our California TCs do live on the West Coast, but none of them actually live in California.
Oh, wow.
So some of them, previously lived there. That's the reason why they know the business, but none of them currently live in California. So they can get the California money without having to pay the California expenses of actually living in that state. So I always tell people of also do market research in that specific state, because too, it is, in my opinion, it comes off as uneducated, or in so many ways to other TCs as you're trying to steal the market if you come in so much lower based upon another state. When I originally started off in California, our rates were still comparable to like Georgia and Florida. And I had an interview with one agent and he was like, do you have any experience here? And I was like, yes, we've done 100 transactions in California, X, Y, and Z. And he was like, well, based upon your pricing, I don't feel comfortable working with you. And I had to take a step back and say, you know what, that makes sense, because if my pricing is not in market or alignment with other TCs, they're going to question my experience, my knowledge, my ability to do my job. And I had to learn to cater my pricing to the market of that state to be able to not only compete with other TCs, to be able to gain the trust and the knowledge from the agent.
You just dropped so many gems in that, because money, finances, pricing, all of that gets really scary and intimidating. We're already managing so much ourselves. First of all, like, am I okay? And then when you add other states and people and, trying to sell yourself, trying to find that middle point, or that just that soft landing point is can be tough and discouraging. And, the fact that you're willing to put yourself out there and admit when you're wrong, or, okay, maybe I should improve here, and knowing your worth. I love that. I wrote that down. Know your worth and double it. Everyone just write that down. If you're listening to this,
that's important.
That is so important. It starts there,
It does. And I think the biggest thing is, as TCs, a lot of times we're scared to put a dollar amount on our worth. Can we ever actually give a good dollar amount? Because most of us, we do more work and we take on a lot more than what we would ever be paid anyways.
Right.
That is because we're just the TCs of the transaction. I know some TCs that, even including myself, I can say that we do just as much work as the agents. We may not drive around and spend money on wear and tear on our car or gas, but we are constantly doing follow-ups. We're constantly doing that, because every TC has experienced that one unresponsive buyer that you have to call 20 times to get their earnest money deposit done. So we've all experienced those things, and we love to say that, okay, we're going to save you an average of, let's say, 10 to 12 hours of transaction. But we've all had those transactions that it takes us like 30 hours to complete because of follow-ups, amendments, all of those things. And sometimes the way we get paid is never enough.
Agreed. We can end the podcast there. No, I'm just kidding. Because I actually recently had a transaction where file was done. It was like one of those, like, this is too good to be true. It's too smooth. Like, what's going on? And I think it was like 2 days before we closed, like, oh, we're adding the wife to the contract. And they just sent like the one document adding the wife, but they didn't send any disclosures. I was like, excuse me, we're going to need everything re-signed, like from top to bottom. And you just have to start your process all over again. And you have to be agile. You can't, even in the moments where, everything goes right, as much as I would love to, relax, and it's never over. Even after it closes, you're still doing work, because I think people forget about that part. Is knowing your worth is also knowing that you are still responsible for other, protecting the work you've done and protecting the people behind the, on the contract and the agents, because files are still active. I'm actually in California, in San Francisco to be exact. Call me if you need anyone. If you have
We're definitely hiring again for California now. So,
we're still doing maintenance after the files have closed. We're paying for storage in our cloud systems. We're paying for our DocuSign systems that we use, and basing your prices on just one factor is, I feel like you're losing out.
correct.
And I'm glad you mentioned all of that, because I think it's important to break down what we actually do. I still to this day get questioned by people I've done so many transactions with, and they're like, well, why did you charge this much for this type of property, but not this type of property? And I was like, well, I've disclosed this in the beginning, but we can go over this again. Like, it's like they stay trying to decrease my rates in the middle of us already having, built a relationship, a working relationship. And you have to just be strong in that and stay firm. And you're going to be fired. You're going to have to fire. That's another aspect of being a business owner and running the show. And without naming names or giving too many details, have you had to fire anyone?
Oh yes.
That's a whole separate podcast, actually.
But to give you one tip of something that I had to do for myself that has worked well. So to your point of having to defend yourself to certain clients, right? So some of my clients, they tell me like, okay, so when are you doing a price increase? Those are those clients, so they want to pay you more, right? But then you have some clients that nitpick every single thing. So what I started doing was, those clients are always the same people. Mm-hmm. So what I started doing was giving them a quarterly report of how I help them. And does it take me a long time to do? No, because my lovely system of open to close, it kind of automates some of that. I can just, I can show you one day of go in there and just categorize everything for them. It's already built out. It's just easy to download and send it to them in a nice little email.
Oh, wow.
But I started doing that. I started to show them that if you have questions on how I'm helping you, here's your answers. And now they don't ask that question because they know on the last day of the quarter, they're going to get this report that tells them how I helped them. It tells them their commission that they've received and the small percentage that they paid me out of their total commission amount. When they start seeing those numbers, they then realize how minuscule it is compared to if they would have had to do it, what they would have, what the time they would have spent in there. So there was one particular agent that I was still having the back and forth with. So what I started doing was, so Open to Close has a section called notes, and you can put your own notes in there and you can share them with others. So I had a specific section for my own notes that I always put any difficulties that I've had in that transaction. One, it reminds me, if someone reaches out later, it kind of refreshes my memory of that particular transaction, just because I handle so many transactions every month. So I started including that note section to her of like all the difficulties from her client that I had to deal with, or even from her.
Yeah.
I had to send you a follow-up 10 times on this. Not that I'm pointing it out, but it would say, hey, follow up on this day, follow up on this day. And it would say on the same thing. And for her, she started to realize, like, I don't pay you enough. Because a lot of times they forget the work that we actually do in a transaction. And they just start looking at like, oh, well, I have to pay you $500 here, or whatever the amount is. They start to look at that and then forget the actual work and the time you had to even help them that was beyond your actual TC responsibilities.
Yeah. And I think that's a great way to stand out as well. You sending out the quarterly reports, or you involving, I think transparency is key as well, because they forget we're all busy. My family and friends still think I do mortgages and lending. So it's important to continuously just stay in communication, have clear, open transparency, and especially if you're being mistreated, or if you're dealing with an unruly client or customer that is being difficult, or if they're being great, compliment them. I think that goes a long way as well, because we get so caught up in like the checklist. All right, did I do this? Did I do this? Did I do this? And we forget to be human. We forget to humanize the process. And I love that you involve that agent in that process, in that moment, whether it turned out to be good or bad, or if you fired them or kept them, you stepped out of your comfort zone and was like, you know what, hey, this is what's going on. And you didn't do it with the intention of making more money. You did it for the intention to protect yourself.
Correct.
And your time and knowing your worth.
And the biggest thing is too, if I make sure I send out that email, even if there's one of my other TCs working on that file, because if there is a argument or a discrepancy, I'll handle that for my TCs. I never want to put my TCs in that situation where they're being hostile towards them or anything like that. And to your question of, have I ever had to fire anyone? I fired a lot of agents because for me, my first responsibility is protecting my TCs.
Yes.
Beyond anything else, if any of my TCs ever feel uncomfortable, if they ever feel that someone's being angry towards them, mistreating them, that is my first responsibility. And a lot of times I've even taken clients away from a particular TC because they feel uncomfortable working with them, or they feel someone's hostile towards them. Because in my opinion, I'd rather take on the hard clients. And then if I can't handle them, then I can just fire them. But I never want my TCs to feel like they have to, or they're forced to take on someone just mistreating them, because that's not what they're here for. They're here to do their job, not to be belittled or anything like that. So yes, I fired agents before. Generally, it's a there's no alignment when it comes down to their responsibilities versus my responsibilities, and then the lack of communication. So what I would say is, when it came down to firing agents, it always came down to two things. Either our communication style did not align, which would mean that I'm reaching out to you, things like that, I'm not getting a response, and then things are being missed because I'm not getting a response, or you feel that I am not, as I like to say, catering to them the way they want me to. Because I had one agent that I fired very actually in my early stages of being a TC, because my first policy is email. Email is the best way to communicate as well as to protect yourself.
Absolutely.
But with this particular agent, she wanted me to email her, text her, and call her when she didn't respond to me. I'm not your babysitter. I'll send you 2 emails in the same day. If you don't respond to my emails, I will follow up with a text message. But I'm not emailing you all day, calling you all day, sending you text messages, because you also know your responsibilities.
Right.
For example, I can't review the inspection report and determine what to request, because if I have to do that, I need to be, I need the whole commission at that point, because that's a lot of work.
Show me the money. Hello. I need a referral fee, co-agent, whatever. I'll take
it. I need something, right? So in that particular situation, we had one buyer, him losing their earnest money, because I sent my agent 14 messages between email and text messages of like, hey, financing is ending. The lender is saying the buyer is not qualified, but they won't provide a denial letter until they talk to you. Can you please reach out to the lender? No response all day.
Man.
And then at 11 p.m., I get a text message and they were like, hey, did you send a denial letter? Did you send a termination? I need a denial letter. And the lender won't provide one until they talk to you. Right. So luckily, I had went ahead and did a termination, and I just had sent it to the listing agent. So I sent it, but then this was a Georgia one. So within Georgia, you have 3 days from when you send the termination. Well, at that time, you have 3 days when you send termination to submit a denial letter. She did not call the lender at all.
Oh no.
So we still didn't get a denial letter. So the listing agent never signed the termination because they didn't get a denial letter. They sent us a new termination requesting the buyer's earnest money, which by law, they were now entitled to, because we didn't provide the second step, which is the denial letter. And my agent was so mad at me. And I was like, and even after I sent the termination, I was like, hey, please get the denial letter. Please respond back to the lender. And the lender every day is saying, hey, please call me before I submit this denial letter. I don't know what the particular issue was, the reason why. But again, that's not my job. I'm telling you what we need. I can't do your job for you. But generally for me, I fire clients over miscommunication or their inability to communicate with each other, or if they're being hostile because they're disrespect and things like that are just things that I won't tolerate within my business. No one's going to attack myself or my TCs. So I've terminated clients over that.
And it's important to have boundaries too. And in the beginning, I think we're always, even how you mentioned, you priced lower, because you thought that was right. You thought it would be maybe the best way to get business. And as you grow, you realize, oh no, too many red flags from this experience. I no longer am doing that. I will not communicate with you after a certain hour, or,
Yes.
you will not speak to me or any of my TCs in this manner. There's just so many things that we're constantly being pressed on and challenged. And I think one of the biggest misconceptions, I don't know if you've experienced this, it kind of seems in line with what you just said, but I think a lot of realtors think that we are their assistants.
Yes.
And that we are the ones like, okay, well, check my calendar today. What do I have to do? Can you send out this and that? Or they just assume because we do the paperwork that we're the ones, I'm going to write the contract. I'm going to go get that counter offer signed. And if that's what you agree upon, great. But like you said, you're going to have to show me the money, or this is my service fee. These are my fees for every service that I do. I'm open to doing this, but I also am not going to be liable to send, this extension or these documents to your client if you have not talked to them about it. I can't assume. And I'm glad you also mentioned email. We call that CYA, cover your A, because if they only want to speak on the phone, so much can happen in that conversation. If it's not documented, they could use that against you. If you sent out that document and you only had a verbal agreement, and then if something were to go down with that transaction, it could come back on you. And they say they could flip it on you. Well, I never told you to send that. But the fact that you didn't have it in writing, who's at fault? You know what I mean? And those are just like the dark areas of real estate that.
So to kind of cover the 2 points that you mentioned, the first one being things that we will and will not do. So when my clients sign an MSA, my entire service list, and when I mean the entire service list of like different tasks I will do, they have to sign. But more importantly, they have to sign what I will not do.
Ooh.
I have an entire list on the last page. So they have to initial that what I will not do in a transaction. And that's where my legal background came into play for me, of being able to also protect myself in those ways. So they have to initial on that page saying, I will not do these things. And it even says, regardless of the amount of money, there are just certain things I'm not going to do. I'm not checking your calendar for you because guess what? My calendar is full enough. I don't need to check your calendar as well. So it's different things like that that's listed that in your service list that I will, in my master service agreement, that I will also not do. And that's why I tell TCs now, take the step beyond of what I will do. Also specifically state what you won't do. Because then when they ask you to do this, please visit page 10 of my MSA that states that I will not do X task. Or this task is not a responsibility of me as a TC. Yeah. You may not want to take the approach of, hey, I won't do this regardless of the amount of money. You may want to put on there that, fees are negotiable. And then at that point, when they ask for that task, you respond about how much it is. That way you're now protecting yourself. Now, another thing that I always do with phone conversations, every phone conversation is recapped via email with the bottom of the email stating, I will not complete the task until response is received.
Oh.
Now I'm protecting myself, because if you tell me, oh yeah, do such and such amendment, things like that, I need you to respond. Not only has this helped protect me, but it's limited the number of phone calls that I get from agents having requests. Because then they know, well, if I do this, I still have to send her an email or respond to her email to say this. Yeah. So most of them just go ahead and take the approach to send me the email initially. Because I tell my agents, you do not have to write a formal email to me. You can put in the email, hey, Shalonda, can you do X, Y, and Z? And it can be from, voice to text for all I care.
Right.
I don't need it written out in this long format or anything like that. As long as you send over the information in writing, I'm fine with that.
Exactly.
And a lot of my agents have taken that approach. I'm like, okay, because I'm going to call her. She may not answer because, If I'm calling her, that means there's 30 other people also calling her. So let me go ahead and send the email. She's going to respond faster anyways via email. And now I can go ahead and get my request completed. Even if she is on the phone, if she's not on the phone, I can go get my request completed.
Exactly. And that's another way where we can save realtors time.
Yeah.
It's not just with the paperwork, it's with the communication. We
Mm-hmm.
don't want to be on the phone all day talking. And one thing we do know about realtors is they do love to talk, at least the good ones. They love to talk, they love to vent, they love to be heard and
Mm-hmm.
validated and affirmed. And the first person to pick up, they're definitely going to give it all to you. So the
That's
fact
just
that you
one
beat them to
thing.
the punch, yeah.
That's one reason why I'm not gonna lie. I hate when agents call me sometimes because it's never, hi, can you do this?
Never.
It's always the pleasantries in the beginning, and then afterwards, and they have to tell me about their kids or their husband or a transaction. And I'm just like, still at the same time, I'm just typing away of whatever else I was working on. I'm listening, but at the same time, I never stopped doing what I was doing. But that one phone call that could have taken, 10 minutes turns into 30 minutes or an hour. And then you feel bad because you're like, okay, now some people can't multitask. So like you may waste an hour on the phone with an agent. Luckily, I can multitask. I don't waste that time.
Right.
But when I have to get off the phone, I'm like, hey, I'm sorry. I have another call. I have something to like try to get off the phone. And then you feel bad. You're like, okay, like now they might be mad at me because I got off the phone with them and they're trying to vent.
Yeah, you definitely have to find your exit strategy in those conversations and find a way to, I think no matter what, you're going to feel some sort of feeling, whether it's
Mhm.
anger or you feel bad, but it's important not to take up so much of your own time just
Right.
being on the phone all day because time is money. I feel like
Yeah.
that is just a summary of all of this. So speaking of, I want to transition into your programs and your courses. So what made you do that? Like, what was the thought process behind that? Let's start there.
Ironically, the thought process behind it was initially I wanted to help women be able to have their own source of income. Initially, when I first started the Institute, that's what it was. I was raised in a two-parent household. My mom worked full time, but I always felt like, to a degree, that there are a lot of women out there, and especially when I created the program in 2019, they were transitioning to be stay-at-home moms or even single moms who wanted additional source of income. So for me personally, I wanted to help those women, right? That's my initial response behind creating that. And I wanted something that they can do within the matter of a few days, and then they should be ready to take off into the market. That's what my initial thought process was behind it. From there, it kind of progressed. And I then said, I wanted to help everyone. Like I wanted to help women, men, kids, whatever it is, be able to create something for themselves, whether they wanted to do it part-time or full-time. That's why the program teaches them how to do it both ways, as well as having a second source of income. In the market that we're in today, a lot of times, even a two-income household is not enough. That's why you have so many people doing DoorDash and all these other things of additional source of income, because even a two-income household sometimes isn't enough. So I wanted to create something that doesn't take away from your other responsibilities while still allowing for you to be able to learn how to progress in this field.
Nice, nice. So did it take you a long time to put it all together?
Oh man.
I'm sure you're still refining it and editing it and changing it. I'm asking for personal selfish reasons. I'm considering creating some sort of course or offering, like a digital product, because I think it is important for even us as TCs to have multiple streams of income coming from the same tree. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
branching off in different areas and sharing our knowledge and our expertise, wanting to give back in some way, shape, or form. But it's not easy because there'll be moments I'm just like, I can't, I'm overwhelmed. I self-sabotage easily. But how did you go about putting it all together for
It took
anyone
a year
out there
of
considering doing
procrastination and self-doubt, for sure. An entire year of procrastination and self-doubt. Ironically, what I ended up doing was I got a whiteboard. I got this massive whiteboard, and I just started boarding ideas of things that I wanted to discuss within being a transaction coordinator, or what I felt that I wish someone would have told me initially when becoming a transaction coordinator. So that's the reason why it took me so long, because I would write down these ideas and be like, okay, cross this one out. And I was self-sabotaging myself. And one day, my best friend actually called me and said, you know what? Today, what you're going to do is you're going to complete the outline. And I was like, I got work to do. Like, I got other stuff to do.
Yeah.
And this was like 6 o'clock in the morning. I don't answer my phone early in the morning. So it was like it was a surprise I even answered my phone call. And I did. I finished the outline that day, and then from there, I just continued on. But granted, it's always additional editing, things like that, changes you want to make, new courses to specify in certain things. And now I'm writing an ebook. So my ebook actually launches the 15th of March. And within the ebook, it's a all-in-one for people who just want to read. So you get all of your templates, you get all of your guides, but it tells you step by step of what to do. But besides just step by step of what to do as being a TC, it also tells you your challenges that you're going to face. But it doesn't go into, as I like to say, the fluff. I give you the real within the ebook. I'm not going to tell you, oh, well, like this philosopher said this, and this philosopher said this, and this is the reason why we need time management. We all know we need time management, but how can I manage my time? Like, what steps do you do to manage your time? And how do you prevent from being a TC to taking over your personal life? Because that is one of the hardest things that I had to learn for myself, because you have a mobile business and you work from home. How do I shut this off and live my personal life? How do I make sure that this doesn't overcome or encompass my personal life as well? So those are all the things that the ebook gives you, without all the fluff of like trying to add into it of, oh yeah, this philosopher told you this and this philosopher told you that, because we can Google that.
Right.
Again, too, let's be honest, we're all adults. We all understand that being a TC or starting any business is difficult. I don't need to tell you that. But what I do need to tell you is when it is difficult, how you overcome those difficulties. When you are having a hard time, how do you move past that? How do you deal with rude clients? How do you deal with these issues? And giving you various ways to deal with them, not just how I dealt with them, because what didn't work for me may work for you. So I want to tell you the pros and cons of what I did, what I didn't do, and what worked and what didn't work, because you may be able to say, oh, you made this one mistake, but if I change this, then it's going to be the perfect solution for me. Because we all have different personalities. And that's what I wanted to do in my ebook that I wasn't able to do in the course, because the course is more so geared towards, how to do this, how to do that, and teaching you the roadmap.
Right.
And that's important. And you still get your checklists and stuff in there. But what's more important is I want to be able to create my business, but then also build my business to where I'm not making 5 figures, I'm making 6 figures a year, because that's your ultimate goal. If you want to step away from your full-time job, things like that, you want to be able to make more money than you are making in your full-time job.
I love that. I love that. So the ebook is dropping, you said March
15th.
What is there a website for that right now? Because by the time this episode drops, the book will be live. So I want to make sure people get to it.
So it's actually going to be on both of our websites, which is www.closewithelite.com and www.thetcinstitute.com.
Awesome. So I could go on with this conversation for another like 8 hours, but like we said, time is money. So I want to wrap things up real quick. And first of all, thank you again. This has been a great conversation, and I love talking to like-minded people, especially those that are other fellow transaction coordinators.
Yeah.
I've been seeing you all over my social media, TikTok. How would you say that social media has benefited your business?
It has not.
That's real. No, I want people to understand there's good and bad.
It hasn't. I would say that when it came to my institute, there are a lot of people that found me off of social media. And even to being a transaction coordinator, I have gotten some of my business being off social media, but about 70% of my business referrals. So incentivizing, and that's one of the biggest things that I don't advertise, but my agents know, is I incentivize my agents to refer me. Like, if you refer me, you get something off your next transaction. Once whoever you refer me closes a transaction. Mm-hmm. And for them, it incentivizes them because everyone loves money. And every quarter I change my, incentives for them. It's always, you get a certain percentage off. But for instance, for fourth quarter of last year, if you referred 5 people that closed a transaction, 2 or more transactions, you got, nice bottles of wine that were customized to you from Chateau Alon, which is like a lovely winery that we have here in Georgia. So it always incentivizes them to say, oh, like, let me go ahead and refer her. Like, she does a great job for me. I'm gonna go ahead and refer her to you because now I get something off and you get an amazing TC. And then I would say the second way of business would be from co-op agents. After every transaction, if they do not have a TC, I do not poach other clients. But if they don't have a TC, I do send them an email of, hey, we did an amazing job. Thank you for working with us. But I never tell them, hey, let's schedule a consultation. My approach to it always is, if there's any ways that I can improve to assist you in the future, please let me know. Or if there's any ways that I can assist you in the future, please let me know. Most of them are like, oh yeah, like, how can I get more information on your services? Or some of them just write a review and said, hey, I co-opted with her in a transaction. It was amazing. Because the review also goes a long way, even if I don't have them as a client.
Exactly.
And then even to that degree, some of them are not ready for TCs, but they would refer me to someone else that is ready for a TC because we just co-op together on a transaction. But now social media is helping to a degree when I consistently post. I don't do a good job of consistently posting, but that is one of the things I'm working on this month and going forward.
Relatable.
Consistently posting does help when I am consistently posting. It does get more exposure, things like that. And the more exposure is always good.
Absolutely. And for anyone out there who may be discouraged or overwhelmed to use social media, for the days when I think no one's watching, I think for me at least, I use social media as like my practice field. If I feel weak with my public speaking, I have a YouTube channel. Or, if I want to meet and network, I started a podcast. There's different ways to leverage your social media. It doesn't always have to come back to you financially. If anything, it's just building, your internal wealth, and you're building up the skills that you may be weak or lacking in. And but I found you on social media, so that was one benefit.
Great. Well, I always tell people you can use social media for your life. Like, you can use it for your source of income, or you can just use it as a creative way.
Yeah.
Me personally, I've now taken the approach to use social media to help other people.
Yes.
I want my social media channels to be giving advice to other people or showing other people that it is possible. Because, when I started off, there wasn't a lot of TCs that I saw doing that. Now, 27-year-old me feels more empowered to show other people that, you can do this regardless of wherever you are in life. You can do this. And here are some tips for you to go ahead and get it done.
That's amazing. I love it. Do you have a coach or a mentor?
I do not. So I don't have an official mentor or coach. I do have a lot of friends and people in my life that give me good advice, whether it's business or personal. I do have a therapist, so I can definitely say that,
right. I should have mentioned therapist as well. Yes.
That's important. I tell everyone, like, you need a therapist. Even when you don't think you need one, you need a therapist, because it's not always it doesn't have to be something wrong with you to have a therapist. There are multiple different types of therapists. A business therapist that can help you with your business ideas, financial therapist. There's, a therapist for different realms, regardless of whatever you need. So I encourage people to do therapy. There's always think of me. I didn't start doing therapy until I was like 23. So I always encourage people to do therapy in whatever way they need to.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I'm actually about to embark on my own therapy journey for the first time ever. I do have a coach, but I definitely agree. I think some sort of outside opinion or just like guidance is someone to help keep you accountable, especially if you're the type of person that tends to be, kind of all over the place and not quite sure where to focus your attention on. And it could be preventative work as well. It could have been something that triggered you for an episode yesterday.
Correct.
Doesn't have to be all the way from childhood, like you said. So I think that's amazing. Before we wrap this up, I like to tell people, or I like to ask my guests, what is one goal you don't mind sharing publicly that you can share with the audience today?
One goal. This is probably weird. It's probably not something that you would expect for me to say. But my one goal for this year that I'm trying to embark on is creating positive routines. So I've tried this starting in January of this year, and I'm still working on it, still a work in progress. It's creating a morning, afternoon, and evening routine. And I found that I am more productive, I'm more efficient, and more importantly, I feel better physically and mentally with those different routines. Not to go into detail of like what they are, because that's a whole nother topic, but my morning is always to kickstart. My afternoon is to recharge, and my evening is for relaxation. And the biggest thing that I had to realize for myself was my evening routine is probably my most important, because it allows for me to separate my business from my personal life, but also at the same time, go to bed with a relaxed mind instead of, did I do that? Did I do this? Where is this? You know, it's TCs. I think we all do that. And I did that for so long, and I had to get out of that mindset. Like, I had to get into a more relaxed space. So the next morning when I get up, I'm not overwhelmed. I'm not anxious. And more importantly, what I love to tell people, I'm not frustrated. Because a lot of times I found myself, because I was going to bed thinking about TC work, or working until I went to bed, more importantly, that the next day I wasn't excited to do my job. I was frustrated at whatever was going on the next day, carried over, all of those little things. So I would say is my goal for this year, or my biggest goal for right now. And that has helped me so much in my business, and to even be able to progress as a business owner.
I couldn't have said it better myself. That was great. So you've dropped so many gems and knowledge, and I'm probably gonna listen to this episode a few times just to recap, like, okay, what did she say? Yeah, that was good. That was good. So before we ultimately go, what is one key you want to leave the audience with? That it could be a quote, it could be, go read this book, but what is a key that you want to leave the audience with today just to feel more inspired and encouraged to embark on whatever career that they're, passionate about?
I would always say that believe in yourself. I know that's like cliche and everyone always says that, but when I say that, I mean not that you can do it, right? Because I feel like if you put your mind to it, you can do it. But more importantly, that you're going to be successful at it. And everybody's determination of success is different, and don't quantify your success by what you perceive other people to be doing, especially by social media. Social media does provide a lot of insecurities with a lot of people and falsehoods of what you think that they're doing, but quantify your success by whatever you feel like your success is, not by how you perceive other people are doing.
There you have it, people. That was awesome. So I'm going to turn the tables on you. Go ahead and promote yourself, your courses, your social media, websites, all of it. The floor is yours.
I would definitely tell everybody, first, again, I'm Shalonda Moore. Always feel free to use us as your transaction coordinators. We can be, if you can schedule a consultation call at www.closewithelite.com. If you were ever interested in becoming a TC, we do TC courses that are on demand, and we also do one-on-one TC courses specifically with me, and I will help you as a new TC or an experienced TC that's looking to take your business to the next level. That can also be done at www.thetcinstitute.com. Again, my social media is the Fit TC, because I love to work out and I'm also a TC. From there, you can always reach me. Feel free to chat, DM me, message me, anything you ever want. I'm always looking to help and help other individuals progress in whatever their journey is.
Perfect. That was great. All of that information will be in the description of this podcast. So definitely check her out, follow her, book your consultation, buy the ebook, download the ebook, whatever you got to do. Get in connection with Shalonda. I really appreciate this. And this has been another episode of Transaction Care. My name is Lillian Hernandez, aka Lily like the flower. We are learning and growing together. So care for yourself, care for your wealth. Your time is worth it. Let's coordinate. Talk soon.